Now, the album's called Wise Up, and I think that has a specific meaning, especially it refers to where you are in your life right now, I guess.
Yes, it does have a very big meaning for me. I've had 4 terrible years, as most of people know now, and it was horrific. My best quote is, I can say that I would never wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
From a distance, I can't comprehend what all this for.
Picture this. August 14th, 1940, Lucknow, British India. A baby named Harry Roger Webb is born. No one imagining that this child would grow up to become Sir Cliff Richard, one of Britain's most beloved and enduring entertainers. His story begins not with fame or glittering stages, but with displacement. When India gained independence, Cliff's family packed their few possessions and returned to England, struggling to adjust to post-war life. But that hardship would become the fuel for something far greater. As a shy teenager in Hertfordshire, Harry found escape in a cheap guitar and the music of Elvis Presley. Rock and roll had just hit Britain like lightning, and the young man practiced endlessly, copying Elvis's swagger and raw energy. Soon, Harry Webb reinvented himself, new clothes, new hairstyle, new name. Cliff Richard, a name that sounded as solid and edgy as the music he loved. Then came Move It in 1958, a single that critics now call Britain's first real rock and roll record. While many UK acts were still imitating American hits, Cliff brought something new: youthful confidence and British authenticity. The moment he stepped onto TV, teenagers screamed, parents worried, and the press took notice. He wasn't just another singer. He was the UK's answer to Elvis. By the early 1960s, Cliff Richard and his band The Shadows dominated the charts. His clean-cut charm and rebellious undertone made him a bridge between old and new Britain, a nation torn between post-war tradition and the cultural revolution about to explode. And yet, even at his peak, Cliff remained polite, grateful, almost humble, an attitude that made him both loved and underestimated. But behind the smooth smiles and perfect suits was a man who would soon face something more complex than fame: the lifelong tension between faith, fame, and loneliness. When you look at Cliff Richard's career, you're not just looking at success, you're staring at a timeline of British pop culture itself. Few artists have managed to stay relevant through so many generations, and Cliff? He's done it for more than 7 decades. That's not just longevity, that's history written in melody. After Move It shook the airwaves, Cliff became the golden boy of early British rock. The Beatles were still local club performers when Cliff was already topping charts. Between 1958 and 1965, he scored hit after hit: Living Doll, The Young Ones, Summer Holiday. Each one became a soundtrack for Britain's changing youth. His clean image and family-friendly appeal made him the star mothers trusted, a sharp contrast to the wilder rockers who followed. Then came the 1970s, a decade where music shifted, tastes evolved, and many early rock icons faded. But Cliff, he adapted. Instead of resisting change, he reinvented himself. Songs like We Don't Talk Anymore and Devil Woman showed a sharper, more mature edge. He wasn't just surviving the new era, he was thriving in it. And when disco, pop, and electronic music took over, he was right there, blending old-school charm with modern beats. In total, Cliff Richard has sold over 250 million records, placing him among the best-selling artists in history, a club that includes the Beatles, Elvis, and Michael Jackson. He's also the only artist to have had a UK #1 single in 5 consecutive decades, from the 1950s to the 1990s. That's a feat no one else has matched. But beyond the trophies and chart records, what makes his journey remarkable is endurance. Fame, especially in the fickle world of music, burns bright and dies fast. Yet Cliff managed to keep that flame alive by constantly evolving without losing his essence. Still, even as the lights shone brighter, the shadows behind the curtain grew longer. Because while millions adored him, the spotlight also began to expose the cracks, the toll of being forever perfect, forever polished, and forever alone in the noise. For decades, Cliff Richard seemed untouchable, the man who never aged, never stumbled, never lost control. But behind the headlines, fame was slowly taking its toll. Imagine living a life where every smile, every move, every word is judged. Where millions adore you, yet you return to an empty home night after night. That was Cliff's quiet reality. He lived through the rise and fall of the entire British pop industry, watched peers crumble under drugs, money, or fame, and somehow kept going. But keeping that squeaky clean image came at a cost. He never married, never had children, and always seemed to live just outside the circle of normal life. For years, rumors swirled about his private relationships, but Cliff rarely spoke about them. His silence, though dignified, added to the air of mystery and loneliness. By the 1980s, Cliff was still performing, still adored, but something in his eyes had changed. The sparkle that once reflected youthful rebellion now carried the weight of experience and exhaustion. Endless touring schedules, constant media pressure, and the need to stay relevant had chipped away at his privacy. In interviews, he often joked about never having a moment truly alone. Beneath that humor, though, was truth. He didn't know who Cliff Richard the man was anymore. Then came one of the darkest chapters of his life, the false allegations in 2014. After a televised police raid on his home, Cliff found himself in the center of a nightmare. Though never charged and completely cleared of any wrongdoing, the damage was deep. His reputation, painstakingly built over 60 years, was nearly destroyed overnight. "I felt like I'd lost everything," he would later say. "Not just my name but my faith in people." It was during that time that he withdrew further into solitude. He sold his beloved Berkshire mansion, retreated from public life, and moved between homes in Portugal and Barbados. The crowd still cheered when he appeared, but it wasn't the same. The boy who once sang about summer holidays now found peace only in quiet, far from the noise that had once defined him. Fame had given him everything, and quietly taken everything away. At 84 years old, Sir Cliff Richard is still standing, still smiling, still singing, and still refusing to let time or scandal define him. But his world today looks very different from the glittering stage lights of his youth. These days, Cliff spends most of his time in Barbados, in a beautiful villa overlooking the sea. The mornings are quiet, no paparazzi, no flashing cameras, just birds, the ocean breeze, and the man who once filled stadiums reflecting on the price of fame. He often starts his day with prayer, a routine he's kept since becoming a devout Christian in the 1960s. Faith, he says, is what saved him, first from the chaos of fame, and later from despair. In interviews, he's described waking up feeling grateful, yet occasionally haunted by how much the world has changed. The pop culture machine he once ruled now moves at lightning speed. Short clips, viral fame, and forgettable stars. "Everything feels temporary," he once remarked. "But the music, the love, that lasts." Though he no longer tours the way he used to, Cliff still performs selectively. His 2023 Christmas shows sold out quickly, proving that the affection of his fans has never truly faded. On stage he moves slower, his voice softer, but his presence still magnetic. Every note carries the weight of someone who's lived, not just sung, the story of pop. But make no mistake, Cliff's later years are quieter, lonelier, and more reflective. The parties, the crowds, the cameras, they've been replaced by long walks, evenings with a few close friends, and letters from fans who grew up with his music. He's spoken candidly about missing companionship, saying, "Sometimes the silence is the loudest sound." Financially, Cliff remains secure, but emotionally, there's a quiet melancholy. After decades of applause, the silence between performances feels like a reminder of how fleeting human connection can be when your entire life has been lived under a spotlight. Still, even in solitude, there's dignity. Cliff Richard isn't bitter. He's grateful for the music, for his faith, and for still being here, still remembered. Because in a world where fame vanishes overnight, surviving, really surviving, might just be the greatest legacy of all. Cliff Richard's story isn't just about fame, it's about endurance. At 84, his name still carries weight in the music world. He's the bridge between Britain's early rock and roll and today's pop generation. But his legacy is complicated. For some, he'll forever be the clean-cut boy who gave the UK its first true rock star. For others, he's the man who survived fame's cruelty with faith and quiet resilience. What sets Cliff apart isn't just his success, it's his survival. Most stars fade. Cliff endured scandal, heartbreak, and age in an industry that forgets its own heroes. He didn't implode, lash out, or disappear. He simply kept going. That quiet persistence, that refusal to give up, has made him one of the few remaining symbols of an era when pop stars still had to sing live, write songs, and earn their place. He's also become a symbol of dignity under pressure. The false allegations that nearly destroyed him could have turned him bitter. But instead he forgave. "If I carry hate," he once said, "I let them win." Those words sum up his character: strong, gentle, spiritual. Yet there's sadness too. The fame that once brought him love also kept him from living an ordinary life, from marriage, family, anonymity. He often jokes that music was his wife, and fans were his children. But in that humor lies truth. Cliff Richard gave everything to his audience, and maybe that's why, even in quiet solitude, he's still loved. When the final curtain falls, his story won't be remembered for scandal or solitude. It will be remembered for grace. The boy who sang "The Young Ones" grew old, but never grew bitter. His music may fade from charts, but his name, it's carved into the story of modern pop itself.